Johannesburg, like most developing cities, is a complicated city. It is, at the same time, able to infuriate us as much as it is able to excite us. You know the story, whether it's the taxi taking the shortcut to get us to work on time, or the taxi just doing what it wants to do, really. Whether it's the parallel universe presented in the never-ending day of Monte Cassino, or the Habsburg-like palaces of Gold Reef City. Whether it's endless traffic jams, uncompromising crime, the dearth of truly public space, or the dragons of Chinese New Year, the night markets of Mint Street, or the exuberance and diversity of multiple Pride events. This is our complex Joburg, a city intrinsically about stark differences. Today, I'm going to show you why reading Joburg as a city of difference is so important to understanding the city. I don't aim to tell you how one should go about living in Joburg, but I do want to get you to think critically, or more critically, about the ways in which we claim the city. I run a blog called Urban Joburg, which can be found here at www.urbanjoburg.com, Facebook, or Twitter. A central component of our blog is a belief in the right to the city. Developed by this French sociologist, Henri Lefebvre, in 1968, it has been described as both a cry and a demand by the inhabitants of a city to take part in the creation of the city, and in so doing, to share in the fullness of urban life. Do you think that all Joburgers get to contribute to the city, and in so doing, share in the fullness of urban life? And what does this all mean? If I am able to experience the city, I, as a resident of the city, as someone who lives in the city, am able to access all that the city has to offer me, from access to economic opportunities, to being able to form a rich tapestry of social connections. The city provides this to me because of its inherent complexities. Joburg makes me, and I, in turn, make Joburg. We can break this down into three intertwined claims. Claims to appropriation, claims to participation, and claims to habitation. Think of yourself as an inhabitant of the city. If you were able to appropriate the city, you would be able to walk comfortably through the park. If you were a musician, you would be able to take your guitar outside this very venue and go and play for the public in the hope of getting some money. I don't think you would really make some money outside here, but you would still be able to do this. If you were to inhabit the city, you would be able to choose where you wanted to live. And you would do this because of your own reasons for doing so, because it would be close to your job, or it would be close to your child's education. You'd be able to access services such as water and electricity. If you were to participate in the making of the city, you would be able to vote for your local councillor. And then you would be able to demonstrate or organize a demonstration against that councillor if he or she does not deliver on their promises. Now, if you could relate to any of these examples I've given above, then I would say that you probably have a pretty strong hold on your right to the city. The problem is that not all Joburgers get to share in the fullness of urban life. And often, those who are relatively privileged in the city find ways of excluding others. As one of the world's most unequal cities, it is critical that we find ways of strengthening the bonds between communities rather than creating divisions. With our apartheid legacy, divisions between the wealthy and the poor have been entrenched. And I would argue that 20 years after democracy, these divisions have become entrenched even further. The result of this is that we have two divided cities in one, where mistrust of the other is the norm, and an inclusive, equal, and diverse city remains an elusive dream. How so, you may ask? Let's begin with gated neighborhoods. These are global phenomena, particularly in developing countries with high levels of inequality. They emerge in part because of a fear of the other, whatever that other may be. In light of the relatively high crime rates in this city, this fear may perhaps be understandable. But it is necessary to ask, though, who is this other that the wealthy so fear? Is this fear warranted? And what is the impact of this fear on the rest of the city? The problem, as I see it, are that gated communities breed exclusion, and an us and them dichotomy prevails. Perhaps if we got to know our communities, met up with friends in streets, in public streets, attended gatherings in public, perhaps then there'd be no us and them. Instead, our failure to engage with others means that parallel public spaces have been created in Joburg. One for the wealthy, such as the Maboneng Precinct or Melrose Arch, and one for the poor, such as Inner City. The result is a fractured city on both sides of the wealth divide. Our non-public culture, so embedded by apartheid, has unfortunately become the pervasive norm. The Gautrain system offers some insight into how this diverse public has been undermined. Imagine, if you will, someone living in Alexandra and wanting to take the Gautrain to the airport. This person doesn't have a car, but lives practically across the street from Gautrain's Millborough station. On this particular day, at least, they wouldn't be able to walk into the station because the pedestrian door is blockaded by a large steel door. This blends in well with the palisade fencing which surrounds the station. And sure, they could walk through the car entrance, and they probably will have to, but they are not a car. Another example, the rules of public space as per the Gautrain. Rules such as forbidding bicycles on the train unless they are packed away in a travel bag, prohibiting informal trade, eating and drinking. I remember in this regard seeing once one of those omnipresent Gautrain security guards walking up and down the carriage and spotting someone chewing gum and holding out his hand and saying, "Spit your chewing gum out into my mouth, into my hand." Not into his mouth. There is also a prohibition against soiled clothing. So do make sure that your crisp white shirt remains that way because, well, I'm not entirely sure what would happen if you were to wear dirty clothing on the Gautrain. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be rules for public space, but rules should take into account the fact that the use of this public space is so critical to a city's vitality. People need to drink coffee in the morning. People wear hoodies, particularly when it's cold. And people chew gum, and they do this in public. The underlying message in these examples is that the public sphere is something to be heavily controlled by private interests. Interests that determine who and under what circumstances the public can access a public service. These interests are controlled by an elite and do not seek to open up the public service to a broader city public. There is no doubt that the quality of the Gautrain public transport system is excellent, but the exclusivity over the system means that, again, we become a divided city. Another example. This is Eastgate, a shopping mall marooned in a sea of parking. Like many malls that grace the city, the parking isolates the mall from the street, functioning as a hostile moat to a broader, non-car-owning public. Except I discovered a few days ago that there is a way to access Eastgate by public transport in the form of a taxi rank. Great, you may say. Here's the rub. The taxi rank is not only located in the furthest corner of the shopping mall's parking lot, literally on the periphery, but the taxi rank is also completely hidden by this enormously grey wall, allowing access to the shopping mall through a small pedestrian entrance and across a very car-friendly and very pedestrian-unfriendly parking lot. Now, I would like to ask you, if so many of Johannesburg's residents use the taxi system as a form of public transport, and if many of these users use Eastgate as a form of shopping or to do their shopping, then why is a taxi rank not central to the shopping mall? Instead, it's the parking spot that becomes central to the shopping mall. We really do love our cars, don't we? And then we wonder why we complain about traffic jams. What these examples demonstrate, however, is an anti-poor bias. The result is that the city is in many respects not particularly transformed from one characterized by apartheid spatial planning. Suburbs are only slightly transformed in terms of their racial demographics, and the public sphere remains neglected and beset by open manholes, unpleasant sidewalks, and deficient public spaces. There is a glimmer of hope, though, in that some communities have overcome the heavily structured nature of our apartheid past. Take, for example, this arch, constructed over a street that was a formerly white-only suburb. Today, it's Joburg's second Chinatown and represents a magnificent unraveling of old patterns of exclusion and a celebration of difference. Difference is critical to a city's vitality. It recognizes the role of people in shaping cities, from Prophet Mzumba of Binga to Marielle, a resident presumably of Melrose, who wrote this letter of complaint to the Rosebank Kalani Gazette. These people, in their myriad of ways, appropriate, inhabit, and participate in the city. Often, this is a process that is quite a conflicting one, and it may result in the gated neighborhood. It may result in service delivery protests or the unadulterated proliferation of street advertising. But it can also result in elements of surprise, novelty, new experiences, democracy, and equality. Through participating in, appropriating, and inhabiting the city, one can develop a sense of belonging and ownership in the city, and perhaps even a love for Joburg. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you how to live in the city, but I am here to tell you that the choices we make in how we live in our city affect its vitality and its future, both in terms of your own experiences of living in the city, but also in terms of your fellow community's experiences of living in the city. So my first message to you is to ask yourself whether you are being a responsible resident who tries to exert a positively proactive influence over the city, and in so doing is able to dig through Johannesburg's tough exterior to find the beauty and the excitement within. My second message to you is to ask yourself what the impact of your own appropriation, inhabitation, and participation is on the city, and whether it has the net effect of excluding others, or whether it has the net effect of articulating the value of difference. Because difference really is what makes up a city. It encourages us to play, to argue, to learn, and to debate with one another. It opens up a space for surprise, for novelty, for humanity, a place where we become equal yet integral components of this complex yet beautiful social network that makes up our city. A place where we can make Joburg, and in so doing, Joburg can make us. Thank you very much.